Welcome to the Holistic Success Show. I'm Elizabeth Lozano.
And I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Today we're going to have a special guest on talking about healthy ways to improve your life and that may even save your life.
We're also going to be watching a couple of clips from Dr. Puff. The first one is on searching for peace of mind, and the second one is about barriers to happiness.
And one of our questions that you sent in is about setting healthy boundaries.
And the second one is about how to have a happy, healthy, and successful marriage.
We hope you enjoy our show.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Probably one of the most common things that every viewer right now is looking for is basically what we might call peace of mind, happiness, just enjoying life to go well. And yet we pursue so many different things. And why don't they work? Let me just give some examples. Some of you out there, you may know people that say, hey, if I only had enough money, all would be well. And yet many of us, including myself, know people that have lots of money and all isn't well. So that doesn't seem to be the solution. Money doesn't seem to solve it. You may say, maybe it's relationship. If I had the right relationship, I had the perfect lover, all would be well. And yet, in the United States and around the world, most relationships end. So that doesn't seem to be the solution. It can help. It's part of it, but it's not the final answer. Maybe if I get that degree, maybe if I get that final BA. No one in my family's ever had a BA before. No one's ever had in my family a master's before. Maybe if I'm a doctor, all will be well. And yet we all know, I worked with a man once, I didn't know him real well, but I worked with him. He was a doctor. He'd been doing really well financially, and he ended up hanging himself. So that doesn't seem to be the solution. Let's see, what else might it be? Maybe if I had fame, maybe if everyone looked up to me and everyone thought I was wonderful, I would be happy and all would be well. And that doesn't seem to be the answer. So, we keep looking. And we look a lot of different places. And many of you, including myself, may go through our lives trying different things, saying, does this work? Or does that work? And yet, as I often, kind of talk about throughout the show, I have found examples of people who have been happy that don't have one of the things I've mentioned. They actually have peace within themselves without any of these things. So you kind of have to ask yourself, do the things that I'm pursuing right now, whether it's relationship, maybe it's money, maybe it's fame, maybe it's health, will these make me happy? And if the answer is in and of themselves, the answer is no, then you have to say, well, what then does work? And I think what works, at the bottom line is you have to say, I can be happy here now. Now that's a very difficult thing to do, but you don't need anything for that. If you can find peace and happiness in the here and now, no matter what's happening, you don't possess it, but you experience it, then what you'll find is no matter what's happening to you, if you don't have any of those things, there can be peace. There can be happiness. And I'll be talking more and more about that in episodes to come. I'm going to be doing a series on what really at the core makes people happy. But it's not the things that you often think it is. And again, the news and the media supports me on that. Tabloids are full of examples of very successful, very famous, very wealthy people that aren't happy. So if those things don't work, it's a lot about saying, well, that didn't work for them. Perhaps I'll pursue something else. And what this show is about being whole, so everything matters, and it's about looking within and saying, how can I proactively take care of myself? And whether everything externally seems to be going haywire, I can still be at peace and be happy right here, right now. So peace.
This week's first question comes to us from Christy H. from Miami, Florida. And she writes in, sometimes I have a hard time setting boundaries and speaking up with family and friends because I'm afraid of their reaction, or I know it's going to cause drama, yet I'm always left feeling frustrated. Can you give me some tips on setting boundaries with the people I love without hurting them?
Well, setting boundaries is a very important skill to learn in life overall, because if you don't set them, people walk all over you. That's where boundaries are there. If we don't have boundaries, people hurt us. So it's a very important skill to learn. And when you want to implement, particularly with your family or people that you love, they're going to be in your life, because if they're going to be in your life, they may sometimes cross over your boundary. And what you have to do is like setting a line setting a line out there. You say, please don't cross this boundary, or there will, in a sense, be consequences. So when they cross that boundary that you set, like they start yelling at you, or physically accosting you, or saying mean things, you have to draw a line. Mm-hmm. And there are many, many aspects of this, but the simplest, the easiest thing to do is just to walk away and to leave. Say, if I can, say, I love you very much, but right now you seem upset, I'm going to leave. And then you leave.
And this can be on the phone as well, I understand what you're saying, and you're upset and I'm upset, and I just need to get off the phone right now. And they might not like that, but you're being polite. You're not just hanging up on them, but you're saying, I can't talk to you right now, I'm sorry. And you hang up the phone. Doesn't mean you don't talk to them at a later date, because we don't encourage just cutting people off of your family. That's not really a healthy thing to do, or your friends, unless somebody's really been abusive and just continue to abuse you. But you set limits. It's very, very important to set limits with people, and it is okay to cut off the conversation and say, I have to go right now. And often in the work even that we do with couples, we suggest to them, say, I need to cool off right now. I'll be back in an hour. We can talk about this maybe tomorrow. We can talk about it another time. If it's a spouse, sometimes you shouldn't really leave the whole night. Come back and deal with it later. Because sometimes when people are really upset, they say things when they're in the middle of being angry. Sometimes they need to take a walk to deal with it. But setting boundaries is so important. It really is. And I know it's hard because you don't want to hurt the other person. But sometimes if we take on so much without setting that boundary, you might actually blow up and say something even more hurtful than if you would have walked away.
And I think in that same note, when you're setting boundaries, is to realize it's beneficial for them too. Because as Elizabeth just said, when they say something hurtful to you, they will later feel shame for that. So you're actually being loving towards them. Because think about it, when someone who's been mean to you, they often later say, I'm so sorry. And you're allowing them not to have to say that later, because you've set a boundary there. And it's also a very loving thing to do for yourself, because you're not letting people hurt you. If you let people hurt you, the message you're giving yourself is, I deserve this. And you don't. None of us do. And if you're the one crossing someone's boundary, ask yourself, I love them. I don't want to hurt them. So I'm going to stop. I think so often we just want to solve it. We want to finish it. And the best thing to do is, like Elizabeth said, you say, I need to leave now. And then you leave. But I will be back. And we will try this again. So keep working on them because you love them, but also set the boundary at the same time.
Thank you for your question, and good luck.
Thank you.
This week's guest is Dick Stevens. He has survived a heart transplant, multiple heart surgeries, colon cancer, a coma, and acute thrombosis. He's lived to tell the tale. He has written a book called Never Give Up, The 6 Secret Steps You Must Take to Protect Your Own Life. So welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experiences were and what led you to write this book?
Yes, about 30 years ago, I began to show signs of heart disease, and my father had died at 48 from a heart problem, and so I decided that I should prepare myself for what was going to be probably inevitable heart problems. So my wife and I went out and did as much research as we could. We looked on the internet, we asked questions, and we found a total lack of really meaningful information available to the layman, to the average person, so that they could prepare or better be on guard for what was coming. Mm-hmm. And so as a result of that, we one of the reasons along the line that we were asked to do this book was that as we went along through the various heart operations and other operations, we found that so few of the laymen actually know what's going to happen to them and why and what they can do. And so we set about gathering information for people to use in advance of the problem. And that was the start of why we wrote the book. And then as we moved through the various disasters, we found that the healthcare community, the nurses and doctors themselves, knew that there was a big hole. And so they urged us to write a book and to tell from a patient standpoint what the real story is. And so that was the start of it. So the book is a product of our own desire to find information for ourselves, as well as to help the doctors and nurses and prepare people for the catastrophic illness.
Now, what would you say are, two real practical tips that somebody could have, before hopefully they go in the hospital? Hopefully they won't have to go in the hospital, but before they are in there, what are some tips that you might give before they get to that point?
Research everything you can that's written or verbal otherwise from doctors, and find out about yourself, your body, and what the truth of the matter is. And as I had progressed along the line, we found very little in the beginning years of that was written that was meaningful or helpful. So since then, the internet has become much more useful. The data that they used to have was maybe 5-10 years old. But today you can find out success ratios and time of stay in the hospital you probably will have, and all of that in advance of any need. So having that knowledge will put your mind at ease and your chances of survival much higher.
What if someone we love or we ourselves end up in the hospital? What then? What are some important things that we need to know?
Well, the first thing you really need to know, and you should do this before you have a need for the hospital, but you have to form your own team. You cannot survive in good shape alone. And it's not just your wife, but everything from who walks the dog to who goes to get the newspaper, and a million other things that need to be handled. And when you get hit with catastrophic illness, your loved ones or family don't have the time. So you need to prepare for this and actually form a team. And in our book, we outline who our team is and suggest people to do likewise. And the team consists of not only your doctors, the doctors that you trust, but neighbors and people who are going to help you and help your family survive this ordeal, because it is a terrible ordeal. I was in intensive care for 4 months waiting for my heart.
Gosh.
In intensive care with a needle in my arm, and my wife was there as much as possible, and you want to have the family there. My wife has saved my life several times by just being there when other people didn't have anybody. And hospital's a very lonely place, and so the formation of your own team, having that team in place before you have a need, is really a lifesaver to the family and to yourself. And so that's what you really ought to work on, is that team.
Now, what about, because I can remember my grandmother was in the hospital and she unfortunately passed away in December, but I know that my mom was there, and, unfortunately it was a small team that my grandmother had, but one of the things that I learned from her experience was the importance of asking questions, because a lot of times, doctors are humans too, and they make errors, and there had been times where, somebody's coming in to inject my grandmother with something, and my mom says, well, what is that? And the lady looks at the band and says, oh my gosh, wrong patient, or I'm not supposed to give this thing. So I think that asking questions, and I don't know how much that came into your...
Absolutely, and you can't ask questions if you're not personally there. And my wife has insisted on staying in the room when most hospitals shuttle a family out of the way, and so you fight to stay involved, and your wife listens to the questions and what's going on, and then asks questions. She cross-checks every prescription before it's given, and we've found on numerous cases that we were getting duplications, or we're getting double dosage, and could have had catastrophic circumstances.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to be there, ask the questions, and insist on being there. And it's amazing what you find out if you hang tough. And it's not just being pushy; it's being there and asking thoughtful, intelligent questions, respecting the doctor's time, but also insisting on getting what you need.
Mm-hmm. Now, on a personal level, I have a question in regards to how you managed to get through that, because I'm sure everything that you went through was very painful, a lot of rehabilitation, a lot of just hard times. Like, how did you get through that? How did you recover from that?
That's
what do you
my
think?
favorite subject. Hey, I, as an athlete, many years earlier, I'd learned about mental visualization, and I've practiced it all through my life in business and otherwise. But in a hospital, if you're there for a protracted period of time, and I can tell you, while waiting for my heart was 4 months, and you didn't know whether the heart was going to come tomorrow or yesterday or a month from now, and so the time is immense that you have. So you have to prepare yourself mentally to cope with this amount of time and how you deal with it. Because if you have a fatalistic attitude, a negative attitude, you're not going to win. If you have a positive attitude, your chances of survival are much, much higher. And that's what it takes, is figuring out how to manage your time, mental time, and that way you can get through. I used to have a saying, I never think about yesterday, I never think about tomorrow, I just think about today. And by focusing just on the immediate day, I free myself from conjecture, worry, concern, and that's an essential part.
And I think that's a wonderful message. So, if people can continue to learn more from your book, where can they get a copy of this book?
Oh boy, call my house. No, Barnes and Noble, any of the major bookstores, Amazon, but you have to go in. They don't stock these things generally on the shelf.
Okay.
But you have to go in and ask for Never Give Up by the Stevens family.
Okay, and then do you have a website that people can visit?
Yeah, Jones Club.
JonesClub.com.
Yes, and that has become very popular, and it's a very quick way to find out what's on there and see the endorsements from. The nice thing about our endorsements is we have doctors, we have patients, we have friends, and so it's a cross section of people who make up America, and not just a doctor's story. It's a story for the patient.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on our show.
Our pleasure.
All right.
I want to talk about, where does our unhappiness come from? All of us periodically in our life experience unhappiness. We're sad, we're depressed, we're angry. We have things that cause us suffering. Where does it come from? And it actually starts, believe it or not, or from my point of view, when we're about 2 to 2.5 years old. And if I may explain what I mean by that. If you've ever been around children, when they're little babies, outside of having to go potty and need to be fed, they're pretty happy campers for the most part, unless they're colicky. But if they're physically doing well, a baby is a very happy individual, and they're just excited about life and glad to be alive, glad their mom and parents are there. But about 2.5, what happens is our mind starts working for us, and it has what's called memory. So a 2.5-year-old person will have a really good experience. Say, ooh, I like that. I want more of that. Or they'll have they may have some chocolate for the first time. I don't know if you remember having candy or something for the first time, or seeing a child have it, but they're like, ooh, I want more of that. Or they have a bad experience. Maybe they fall and get a boo-boo and they hurt themselves. And they say, oh, I don't want any more of that. That's bad. So they learn to stay away from that. I remember when I was a child, the first time my parents always told me, don't play with fire, don't be careful. I distinctly remember I put my hand up on top of a stove and the stove was on, and I burnt my hand, and it fried it in my brain, be careful with fire. And I've, of course, been careful the rest of my life. So that is a good thing that happens, that we learn what's healthy, what's unhealthy, what's positive, what's negative. Unfortunately, what happens is, as that, what I call the egoic mind, is it starts telling us what's good and what's bad. We decide, or this egoic mind of us, which isn't even real, it just gets kicked in as memory, it takes on its own reality. It decides, I just want good things and I don't want any bad things. And guess what? Life doesn't work that way. I don't care how rich you are, how well things are going for you, sooner or later, you're going to get bumps in life. So the egoic mind is saying, stay away from bad and have good. And it works so hard at wanting the good and staying away from the bad that it actually is the cause of your and my suffering. Because it's trying so hard to keep the bad things away and grab the good things that it's keeping you from living in the here and now. That childlike, joy-like experience that really is at the core of happiness and just joy in life gets lost in this mental commentary of, I want this, I don't want that. I want this, I don't want that. And so part of really the core of getting back to being happy and being healthy here and now is really letting that commentary not be so loud, slowly letting it dissipate and melt away so that you can get back to living in the here and now like a child and be present with what's happening right now. And not so much worrying about, will I get this? And not so much being fearful, or will this happen? Because between fear and desire, it's like we're just going back and forth. I want this, I don't want that. We want this, we don't want that. Which keeps us from living here and now. So if you understand, or if I understand what is happening inside here, that even though it's a good tool to know what's good and what's bad, what's causing me suffering and what causes me joy, it's good to know that, and it's wonderful to move in that direction of having good things happen. But if you grasp too hard, you're trying too hard to get good things and trying too hard to push bad things away, that causes suffering. And freedom from suffering comes from letting that go and being present with what is and loving what is. And putting that all together, it makes it so that instead of grasping too hard at maybe wealth, maybe grasping too hard at this relationship, you just let it loose a little bit. You say the whole picture matters. I want to be holistically healthy. I want to be holistically successful. So when some things are better at this point in your life, perhaps your health is really good. Maybe when you get older, you have awesome relationships. Or maybe at some point you're really doing well financially. You enjoy those things, but you don't grasp them. You don't try to hold them. Because if you hold on to them too tightly, they will cause you suffering. So let go and find peace and joy right here, right now. Peace.
Our second question is from Chris in Boston, Massachusetts. And he asks, I'm getting married next year and I'm very excited, but also a bit worried because my parents are divorced and I see so many failed marriages. What are some tips you can give me and my fiance to have a happy and successful marriage?
Well, there's two answers I would give to that. The first one is, one, be around people that are happily married and doing well. I mean, if you surround yourself with people that are successful, you will much more likely be successful. Same way in relationship. If you surround yourself with people, if all your friends are happily married, if everyone you know that you hang out with is really excited about being married, guess what? You're going to want to be that. But if you have friends that are, talking down about relationships and want to go out and party or cheat on their spouse, that gives you a different message. So number one, I would say be around people that are happily married. And number two, study marriage. We're going to have guests on the show talking about marriage. There's great books out there. Elizabeth and I actually wrote a book on Getting It Right, a guide to healthy relationships. I really encourage you to read that or listen to our CD and just learn about what makes relationships happy and healthy and work, because it's a response that can be improved upon. You learned about being in your marriage or going to be in your marriage from what your parents taught you and what you saw. You can change that, correct?
Yes, and relationships do take work, of course. It's like you have to nurture it. You have to take time for your partner and for yourself. I mean, you guys need to nurture the relationship, and that's a very important thing that people often leave out. And, I think it can be quite negative or, can be kind of depressing because we watch so many movies that have a lot of negativity in regards to relationships where they're cheating or they're fighting or whatever. And the thing is unfortunately our society, we like the drama. That's why we watch the movies. And if everything was all happy-go-lucky, sometimes people wouldn't want to watch it. There always has to be a pro and a con, or a, just an up and a down in the movie. So, also pay attention to what you're watching, because those things actually have an effect on you. But definitely learn about working on yourself and what it takes to be a whole healthy person, and learn about what it takes to be a healthy husband or wife or partner in your relationship, because that's very important. Do all that you can. Take time out for that relationship. And certainly do not make your job your number one priority, because if you do that, you're destined for trouble. You might have lots of money, but what's going to be left?
Well, in that too, as we talk about, this is a holistic success show. And remember, everything matters. And I think a big piece of that pie, that part, is the relationship. It's huge. We talked in earlier episodes about the pyramid, and it's like, at the bottom is you, but the second ring on that pyramid is your relationship with your significant other. Make it a priority over almost everything. So if your actions are you're at work all day and you're not spending time with your significant other and loving them and reaching out to them, learning about how to be a great spouse, your relationship's going to crumble. So learn, as we've said, grow, and hang out with people that are doing well. It'll be great for you guys.
And we wish you the best of luck. And honestly, here you are watching this show, and you're working on things to make yourself a better person. And I think that you're going to have a wonderful life. You just work on it. And thank you so much for writing to us with your question. This week's quote is from Winston Churchill, and he so wisely said, "We make a living by what we get, and we make a life by what we give." And the truth is that when we give in life, we really get a lot. So give and have a wonderful life. Thank you for joining us on the Holistic Success Show. But we can't do it without you, so please write to us with your questions. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our website so you can be kept up to date as to all the great things that we're doing and the wonderful shows we've got coming your way.
And if you haven't been to our website and noticed that we have an opportunity for businesses and organizations anywhere in the world, we can come give a talk and talk about how to be successful in the business world.
Visit us at www.theholisticsuccessshow.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.